I'm Joe Mattioni, host of Late Night Pool Literature Review. On tonight's show, we will be discussing the book In Other Rooms, Other Wonders, a story about feudalism and feminism in modern-day Pakistan. Before we dive into the 8 stories connected by one landowner, we will first discuss the history of Pakistan and how feudalism has long since been a part of Pakistani society. This, in turn, will guide us in the direction of understanding and comprehending how feminism also sprouts from this Islamic theocracy. On tonight's episode, we will also hear and see an interview with the author Daniel Mahmoodin. Catch it now, catch it live on Poolside Literature Review.
In Other Rooms, Other Wonders is a collection of short stories written by the American-Pakistani author Daniel Mahmoodin, highlighting how feudalistic society continues to dominate culture in Pakistan and other Muslim nations. The book revolves around 8 loosely connected stories bound together by K.K. Harani, an aging landowner, and a man losing his influence as well as his property. The stories revolve around his employees and associates as they mitigate a dying symbol of colonialism in a feudal Islamic society. The stories serve to bring light to the untold stories and plights that are now commonplace in Pakistan to this day. Michael Durda of the Los Angeles Times highlights how Daniel's stories highlight a greater human struggle. These connected stories show us what life is like for both the rich and the desperately poor in Mahmoodin's country, and the result is a kind of miniaturized Pakistani human comedy. On every page there are wonderful, surprising observations and details. Details and observations critical to bringing attention to the inequality and suffering many face in his homeland. Historically, feudalism has long been deeply entwined within Pakistani society. Since the days of the native Indus Valley civilizations, the Mughal Empire, and colonial Britain, the people of Pakistan have been controlled and manipulated by wealthy landowners. Whether controlled by their Mughal, Indian, or British overlords, the wealthy aristocrats were charged with keeping order and occupying both the peasantry's body and spirit with menial subsistence farming and other manual labor. The lower classes, or castes, were not allowed freedom of movement within their class system. If you were born as the son of a farmer, then you died the farmer of farmers. The middle class was a rarity and included mainly merchants, artisans, and skilled craftsmen, usually under the sole employ of a specific chief or prince. The British continued this practice, although be it in a much more direct manner. Britain employed governors and viceroys to oversee the large-scale governance of the land, while local officers backed by British garrisons enforced local law. The upper classes were still used as an instrument of control on the lower class. To this day, feudalism runs rampant in Pakistani society. Although the situation regarding landowners is getting better, seeing as there is a growing increase of privately owned land among the middle and lower classes, coupled with the overall growth of the middle class by 2.76% annually, periodic famine brought on by environmental and agriculture malpractice leave the lower classes most exposed. Herring. Although small steps are being taken in the right direction, suffering continues as it has for millennia under the rule of this feudalistic culture. In the book, feudalism is seen throughout each text, such as in The Nuwadin Electrician and Salima. The Nuwadin Electrician. This story revolves around Nuwadin, an electrician who makes his way in the world by illegally splicing power from the power and installing it in people's homes, and his close encounter with death after being robbed. Nuwadin is considered to be somewhat of Pakistani middle class, as he is able to support his rather large family without subjugating himself to wealthier people. Feudalism's influences can be seen both in Nuwadin's profession and in his attacker. Nuwadin is defined as middle class because he is moderately independent and self-sufficient, something of a rarity in Pakistani society, where most others are bound in some way, shape, or form to subservience. The man who attacked him, however, is a persistent example of what happens to those who cannot support themselves or make themselves useful to those in power. Salima. Salima focuses more on feudalism's effects on women more than anything, and therefore should mainly be focused in more of a feminist light. However, there are persistent hints as to how exactly the feudalistic culture of Pakistan is influencing Salima's situation. First, it can be seen in who has control over her life and actions. The people she sleeps with in order to survive, like Rafiq and Hassan, do not have authority of their own, but instead derive it from their master, K.K. Hirani. Although this doesn't seem too significant, it is worthwhile to point out that these men who hold power over her do not really wield their own. Another example regards the fate of Salima and Rafiq's son, who ends up one of the sparrows of Lahore. Although this does not show much of feudalism directly, it highlights what happens to those who have no purpose to serve or fail at making themselves useful. Feudalism is not the only major theme in this book. Feminism is heavily present throughout the text. It is clear in the book that women have to use their body in order to survive. Lily has lived a life looking for a man but also having casual sex. She hopes to find a man in her own class, but in the end winds up reverting back to her old ways and sleeping around. Salima is a lower-class woman who tries to self-gratify herself by using her body. She sleeps with men of a higher social status in order to feel better about herself. She came from a bad background, her mother was a prostitute, and intends to change her fortune by using sex as her leverage. In Provide, Jaglani insists that Janab, a cook, divorce her husband and marry him. Janab refuses, but Jaglani goes ahead anyway and sets up the marriage. This shows male belief that women are their property and they can do with them whatever they desire. The story also depicts how Jaglani is in love with Zanib, but she does not feel the same about him. Even with this, they remain married.
Welcome back to Just Books. Pakistani writer Danial Moinuddin, whose first debut collection of short stories, In Other Wonders, Other Rooms, that came out 2 years ago, has been a great success around the world. And of course, he's now one of the regional finalists for the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, which is announced in Delhi. Danial, delighted to have you back in Delhi. What an eventful 2 years it's been for you since In Other Wonders, Other Rooms came out, a first book. Do you have a feeling of having hit the jackpot?
I do, sort of, but also the book is so far behind me now, and I've been working on other things, so I sort of feel as if that was a different person that wrote that book. And I applaud him, but that's not who I am.
Right, but you have been really on the road quite a lot with your brilliant collection of short stories. It's been much in demand, many translations. How has life changed for you in these last 2 years?
Well, I guess there's more pressure on me, of course, but it's surprisingly little. I mean, writing is a solitary craft, and so at the end of the day, I return to my study and face the computer.
Right. You've always led a sort of double life between Pakistan and America, your mother being American, your father being Pakistani. You went to Dartmouth College, then to Yale Law School, were a practicing lawyer, and then you did this kind of somersault, didn't you, a 360-degree turn, and came to become a farmer in Punjab.
Exactly. Well, I'm a bit of an acrobat, you see, so I've tried in my life, I've been lucky in my life to have a number of careers, so that's correct, yeah. I'm now living in Pakistan.
Right, but working in a law firm in New York and then transferring to running a farm in Punjab, what was that change like?
Oh, obviously it was night and day, and it required a tremendously different set of skills. Although I think that the acuity of a lawyer is very much required to run a farm in Punjab.
Right. What is really very moving about your set of interlinked short stories is their observation of rural life in the subcontinental hinterland. Very curious that in contemporary English writing coming out of the subcontinent, not many people seem to have much time to observe goings-on in the rural countryside.
Well, it's not just that they don't have time, they don't have the access. You know, of all of my friends, all of my literate friends, I'm the only one I know who does not live in the city. So I've had access to these lives and to these stories, and I feel fortunate for that.
Right. That's at one level, of course. But you're going very deeper into the emotional landscapes of these people. In particular, the relationship between men and women. And in the case of many of your interlinked short stories, it's the older men who really prey in a terrifying way on much younger, vulnerable, sadder women.
This is true. But I think just generally, women in Pakistan are powerless, more or less. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but therefore they have to use whatever means are available to them to achieve their purposes. And obviously sex is one of the strongest cards they hold. And work, by definition, if you're looking for powerful men, generally they're older men. You are young and nubile. The object of your affections is older and powerful, and that's a dynamic that I see very much in Pakistan.
Right. So do you see these women as victims?
They are victims, yes, but they're victims who are trying to empower themselves, and often in misguided ways.
And often failing miserably.
And failing miserably. I mean, this is the thing about being powerless. When you're powerless, often you do fail, because men generally have power of themselves. But women having power through men, whenever the affection of the man is withdrawn, they lose everything they've gained.
Right. I mean, there are stories of really heartrending rejection. Samina, the servant girl who works up trading sexual favors, ends up into destitution. The genteel, lower middle class sort of companion to the grand landlord, Mr. K.K. Haruni, also is horribly rejected and driven out of the house after his death. So it's a very inequitable relationship.
It is an inequitable relationship, and I think in Pakistan there's a great deal of inequity, not just between older men and younger women, but between all sorts of people. It's a country in which...
We hope you enjoyed tonight's thrilling and riveting episode about Other Rooms, Other Wonders. And as always, this show is made possible by viewers like you. I'd like to give a special shout out to my cameraman Adam. He did a great job. Stay classy.